Welcome to the Asylum. And now, your hosts, Rick Fleeger and Rick Briggs.
If I don't have enough to deal with in here every day, I got Rick doing the Macarena across the table from me. I have no clue what or why or how, but
that's better than twerking.
I can't argue with that. So, welcome into the Asylum Fantasy Sports Show here on the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You got me all.
Want me to do it?
Yeah, you might have to.
Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network, where you can find all the great shows for all your fantasy needs. We are Fleeger and Briggs. This is the Asylum Sports Show right here on the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find us on Twitter at Asylum Football. You can email the mailbag because still a lot of questions out there, especially with these bye weeks. I tell you, they are rolling in. asylumfootball@gmail.com.
Never say twerking again. I mean, you just threw off the beginning of the show. I mean, it was bad enough you're over there wildly gesticulating for no reason. There was no music. There was no nothing. You're just wobbling about.
Well,
then you said twerking. You've
known me for, over 10 years now.
Unfortunately.
You know I'm just a happy person.
That's just not true. So I have to assume you're on mushrooms or something tonight.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Do you ever do mushrooms? You seem like the type that would have done mushrooms. Oh yeah, we could. That one of these days we're going to do a drunk show where you're going to tell all those stories from the '70s you won't actually say on the air. We've got to have that. But it's week 11, Rick. Week 11.
Yeah, man.
I don't like it. It's 20 degrees here in Western Pennsylvania. Fantasy playoffs are what? You have 3 games left before your fantasy playoffs start. This thing's about over. We're going to be talking about. What, NASCAR? Well, no, that'll be over. We'll be talking about hockey here in a few weeks.
College basketball, that's about it.
I'll talk college hoops, but is there a fantasy college basketball?
College basketball, yeah. Oh, yeah. I would imagine there's fantasy anything.
Maybe we'll become experts at that.
But I tell you, another significant week, Rick. Green Bay, the Giants, Seattle, and Tennessee on a bye. A lot of potential points out there sitting on the bench resting.
A lot of QBs and running backs when you look at that list.
Yeah.
That's what stuck out at me trying to get ready for our starts and sits tomorrow night. I was struggling because there ain't anybody you can sit at this point. But
really.
We'll do that anyhow. We'll worry about that tomorrow. So let's get into the headlines coming out of Week 10, Rick. Couple of minor things. Alshon Jeffrey, he's day-to-day with an ankle. That's surprising coming off the bye week, and I guess it's a true day-to-day, almost a game-time decision. So something to keep an eye on there. Here's the one story. There's a lot bigger headlines. Well, maybe not bigger, depending on how this goes, but the one I find most fascinating is this Tyler Lockett situation. Have you followed this at all?
Yeah.
To my knowledge, I mean, he's probably out now, but as of 2 days ago, he was still in the hospital. Now, they have the bye week coming up, and Pete Carroll's running around saying, it's no big deal.
Fine.
He's not going to miss any time. Can this possibly be true where you have swelling to the point of a multi-day hospitalization, and they called it a serious issue coming out of that game, and now is this just Pete Carroll being happy stoner Pete Carroll, or what is this?
I mean, okay, if nothing's broken and you're still in the hospital, I mean, that's about the deepest bone bruise you could probably get, I would imagine. It was something to do with the shin.
Right.
I know. So obviously he could have got kicked in the shin. That would be a serious painful injury, but usually if you're in the hospital
for multiple days,
there's no meat in front of the shin. I mean, probably some damage in there.
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't necessarily believe Pete Carroll, and as a fantasy owner with what Tyler Lockett's done, I'm in a full-blown panic, and hopefully over this bye week, it's just anymore when you hear, I'm trying to think of an example and I'm blanking on it, but we've heard this a couple of times over the last couple of years where he's in the hospital for a potentially serious situation. You're worried as in if he wasn't in the hospital, we'd be talking amputation here or something. Trey Burke? Who was it? There's a couple guys that have had this, and it's...
Teddy Bridgewater almost had his knee. Robert Edwards way back with the Patriots almost had his leg amputated. Now, his was different. It tore an artery, I think, when he was running in the sand.
And that's kind of what I think of when they say this, right? Because he was sitting on the sideline. And, of course, they called him questionable to come back. They always say that. But he didn't look to be – he was sitting but didn't look to be – in any type of agony. And then all of a sudden you find out he's in the hospital, and you think, all right, well, this is just, something's real swelled up. They don't want to put him on an airplane, so let's get this checked out. To where, all right, he's still there, to where, that hippie Pete Carroll's running around saying, hey, no biggie, no big deal. This is something, I don't know if we'll get the truth until probably this time next week, but something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Because something
he's getting fitted with an artificial leg, but he'll be all right.
Something doesn't smell right to me about this one.
I'll tell you what, Rick, something that, talking about the things that were really significant, and you could see it in the second half of that Rams-Steeler game, is Rams losing center Brian Allen.
Yeah,
he's
that's huge.
out for the year. That affects your Jared Goff, your Todd Gurley's, and basically all those receivers as well. And the Rams have been looking really shaky anyway. This is a big blow to that offense.
Well, and I think what you saw, Jared Goff was just bad, and I presume will continue to be bad, here on after. Where it really affected in that game specifically was Todd Gurley. Early in that game, Rick, he was ripping it off 9 yards at a clip, and it looked like it was going to be that all day.
Right up the gut.
He goes down. Gurley slows down. Then they completely went away from it, which I never understood in what was a one-possession game all day. So I don't know if that's bad coaching, if it was the lack of their center, whatever it was. But I think it's more significant because we're reaching that point in the year where if everything they told us was true, now it's Todd Gurley time, right? We've kind of NBA-style load management up until this point. Now's the time you set them free. You got to have these wins to make the playoffs. Now you take a center out. It's a bad title. If you've been patiently waiting for Todd Gurley to take you back to a title, it might not going to happen.
That's right, and they're a very precarious position right now. I mean, in that Western Division, 8-1 and 8-2, I believe. Seattle and San Francisco. You have you have Green Bay, Minnesota, well above 500. Dallas and Philadelphia still right there. I mean, there's no room for error.
I don't see.
Plus, you have Carolina and New Orleans.
Right. I don't see a scenario at this point where the Rams make.
No, they have to rip 3 or 4 off in a row to really step into a nice position.
Yeah, because I kind of kept waiting for San Francisco to come back to the pack. Even after a loss, I don't feel that way anymore. They're for real. It's just maybe I was slow getting there. I had a hard time buying into it. That team, that defense is for real, and they're good enough offensively. Now, Emmanuel Sanders dealing with those ribs, that's nothing long term. But boy, he had
awful painful,
and he added an element to that offense that they didn't have. He made them that much better. But I think they're the real deal. Tonight, Rick, James Conner, he's going to be good to go. Take on the Browns after dealing with that shoulder injury. Could be glad tidings for him. Devontae Freeman, Rick, out 2 weeks with a foot sprain. Tell you what, doesn't much impact your rushing yards for your fantasy team, but he'd been doing some good things for PPR-wise and in the passing game, and that's going to be a loss for a team coming off a huge win. You lose him, and, of course, Austin Hooper going to miss time with that sprained MCL. Reports come out yesterday that it was going to be about a month, and the coach immediately said, no, I consider him weak to it. He's taking the Pete Carroll stance, I guess. So
they do that in the South, in the Southern Division, so...
So, but bad tidings coming from Atlanta after what was a huge win. So you take Freeman out, of course, everybody's just losing their mind, and the draftniks are pulling out their write-ups for your boy Brian Hill from when he was coming out of college. And, boy, he's a stardom everywhere you look. You buying?
Kind of like Ty Johnson.
Might be more fervor.
He's going to bring you that championship. I mean, you're a graveyard if you don't spend your dollars on him.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if Devontae Freeman isn't carrying your team, look, this kid may – admittedly, Devontae Freeman hasn't all year, hasn't looked like Devontae Freeman that we've come accustomed to.
Not that we thought we would see when you take Coleman out of the mix.
Yeah, no question about that. So from that standpoint, this kid may provide a little spark for him. But as far as turning into the next LT, I wouldn't be holding my breath.
Well, here's where logic has to prevail, right? So as you look at that offense and the way the season went. Now, let's put the caveat here. It's week 11. Everybody's injured. Half the league's on bye. So if you get a guy who's going to be a starting running back, yes, you should make a run at him. And yes, you should probably plug him into your lineup. But here's where we got to temper expectations. Here's where everybody's got to calm down. So you got a guy named Brian Hill, who I promise you, at least your average to slightly above average fantasy player had never heard of until last week. All right, let's be honest here. He was behind Devontae Freeman, who has been a big disappointment. He's kind of salvaged his fantasy season from a PPR standpoint, like I mentioned. But Freeman's been a huge disappointment. They haven't been able to run the ball with Devontae Freeman. Mr. Hill wasn't just behind Devontae Freeman.
No.
He was behind Ito Smith as well. So here's a guy, if he is the second coming of LT and Jesus, maybe he probably wouldn't have been behind both of those guys on a team that's been completely unable to run the football. I think logic tells me, yes, if I'm missing guys, if I got guys on bye, I got buys hurt, certainly he's going to touch the ball. We all know in the end fantasy football comes down to opportunity almost as much as what they do with opportunity when we hit this war of attrition portion of the season. But, yes, spend all your free agent dollars. Light your hair on fire. Brian Hill is LT incarnate. It's just, come on, guys.
If you happen to be sitting with a fantasy team with, say, I don't know, say you have Zeke and Marlon Mack.
Right.
You don't need to stick Brian Hill in as your running back.
No, it's
as simple as that.
It's just such an overreaction.
Yeah,
the amounts of money we've seen be spent on him free. Now we're getting towards the end of the year. I don't know how you can't take the free agent dollars with you into next year. But just I get so flustered. You brought up Ty Johnson and now Brian. I get so flustered watching the back and forth and all the experts taking a victory lap because they like the kid coming out of college and now the third string running back for a football team that's been completely unable to run the football is starting now and he's about to take over the world. Now, does it happen? Yeah, it happens. Somebody catches lightning in the ball at the end of the year and somebody you never expected leads teams to fantasy championships. If I'm wrong, I'll wear it. I don't think Brian Hill is going to win you a title. I just don't see it.
And let's look. We look at the Lions, and now we look at the Falcons. This isn't the same thing as Alvin Kamara got hurt and Latavius Murray's taking his place.
Or when LT would be out and Michael Turner would go off.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, I'm just doing present day right now. Latavius Murray is already basically a proven commodity in a system where Mark Ingram has just left was a top 10 or 15 back anyway.
Along with Alvin Kamara's top 2 or 3.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously if Kamara's out, you want to get Murray in, and you better spend that treasure trove full of dollars to get him. But, of course, he was drafted anyway. But the point is, this isn't even close to the same scenario.
No.
Should you get him if you've had some injuries? Sure. He's going to be starting for at least a couple of games.
Right, yeah. So, again, we're getting to that attrition standpoint. I don't want to tell you, don't bother. He's going to be off, but just pump the brakes.
Right.
And this Austin Hooper thing, that is huge. That is
huge.
That is absolutely massive. Evan Ingram's banged up and on a bye. Now you take Hooper out. Travis... Boy, if you got Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz, you're talking about sitting in the catbird seat right now. There are no tight end. The tight end was awful all season as it was, and now these guys going down. Just bad things.
Yeah, Darren Waller's been a real bright spot in the tide.
I still can't get him in my mind when I'm talking about the elite ones, and he's right there, and he's
right now, PPR, you have Hooper 1, Kelce 2, Waller 3, Mark Andrews another one at 4, Kittle's at 5, and Ertz and Henry as well. Of course, we lamented about Ertz about 3 weeks ago. He's been on the climb, and Hunter Henry come back from an injury. He's moving up as well. And there's Greg Olsen, as bad. No, I can't say bad, but as inconsistent as he's been. He's 2, 4, 6, 7. He's 8th in tight end scoring in PPR.
Tells you all you need to do. It's 2019, and Greg Olsen, absent Cam Newton, is the number 8 fantasy tight end in the
with
league
35 catches.
Yeah, it's been a dirge this year, no doubt about it. All right, Matt Stafford still being considered day-to-day with those fractured vertebrae in his back.
He'll be okay.
That's another one I just don't understand. They've got to be playing possum here, right? I wonder if you see Matt Stafford again this year. To what end?
I can't see any end unless they win 2 or 3 in a row and he heals up a little bit, and there's still an opportunity to make the playoffs. If they lose the next 2 or 3, why would you risk that? I mean, number one is it's your back, and there's broken bones in it.
Right.
That's nothing. That's not like a toe.
No.
I mean, that could be dangerous.
And that sounds like with something like that, right? That's just going to be a rest thing.
Right.
There's going to be nothing they can do about it. So things could get rough there for Kenny Golladay. He's about been the only fantasy relevant player on that team. I guess Marvin Jones every other week or so.
Yeah.
Anytime I run up against him in a close matchup and he scores 60 fantasy points. And Dwayne Haskins, Rick, been announced he's going to start the rest of the season for the Redskins. It doesn't matter. Fantasy-wise or NFL-wise. It's smart, I think, by the Redskins. Let's see what you have. You're going to have a top 3 pick, top 4 pick.
It's smart as well because now you don't have to run the risk of Keenum getting hot and winning a couple of games and passing up Miami and the Bengals.
Yeah.
And I mean, why lose these picks?
Yeah, so good move there. I think real bad news for Terry McLaurin, Rick. You look at the splits between what he did with Case Keenum. We're not talking about Peyton Manning here. We're talking about Case Keenum. But when Dwayne Haskins is there, Dwayne Haskins just isn't there yet. That we know. So this is smart by Washington, right? Give him reps, see what he can do over the next 6 games, 7 games, whatever they have left, and decide with those top 3 picks, are you going after a Joe Burrow or a Tua, or are you going somewhere else? You know what I mean? And Dwayne Haskins is that guy of the future, but just not good for Terry McLaurin, who's been such a bright spot, probably the lone bright spot. You could make an argument for Adrian Peterson, but really the lone actual bright spot for the Redskins, and Haskins just ain't the dude to get him the ball enough times for it to matter.
You got that right.
All right. Well, that's about it. I'm tired of talking about people being banged up. Week 10, we'll give our takeaways here. My first takeaway, I'll just hop right in. This is an easy one. What a great week of football. I've been kind of lamenting and bitching and carrying on. This year has been... I wonder if I'm clouded by how bad the officiating has been and all the nonsense surrounding the league. But, boy, Week 10, it seemed like every game was either an absolute stunner, a one-possession game, came down to everything. What a great weekend of football.
It was. I was, transfixed the entire day and into the night. I mean, it was great. I can't – I'm just – totally impressed. I mean, I have to say, that's one of my takeaways. I have believed, and I'm still believing in Kirk Cousins, man. I think he's going to be a big-time guy. I mean, he played well in that game. Did he have the massive passing yards against the Cowboys like Dak did? No. But he's 23 of 32, modest 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, no fumbles. The run game's key with Minnesota. Cousins doesn't mind not throwing a ton.
Right.
And, I mean, just a great game. Look, it's not like Dallas wasn't tearing up that Minnesota defense at times. And, I mean, Amari Cooper torched them.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, Minnesota's a solid team, and I think Kirk Cousins, I think he is a guy that can take them deep in the playoffs.
And if this team makes a run in the playoffs, we're going to look back to this game. Because this is truly the first time in prime time against a good opponent where Kirk Cousins went out. And again, he didn't dominate numbers-wise, but he looked like he was in charge, right? He did everything right. He didn't throw that back-breaking Tony Romo-like pick that he'd done his whole career in these type of games. This looks like after all that nonsense, all the carrying on by Diggs, and even worse, carrying on by Thielen, that he has got this team under control. This is his team. It's running through Dalvin Cook. He's making the throws he has to make when he needs to make them, especially down in the red zone, and finding out all of a sudden Kyle Rudolph is the the be-all, end-all for tight ends catching touchdowns right now. It's just he took this, and if they go deep in the play, this is a game we're going to point at least where I say, all right, I like you, I now believe. I was skeptical going into that game, I now believe.
To expand on that point, yeah, we're going to look at this game as like, okay, Kirk Cousins arrived at this game, but I'm going to expand that and go back to the Diggs-Thielen whining and convention about their quarterback.
Right.
Where Kirk Cousins, it just seemed like, man, a switch turned on.
Yeah.
After that.
It might have worked. Right?
It may have worked. It may have been because he was angry. It may have been because he woke up and says, yeah, they're right. I have no idea.
Right.
Not even around that team. But, I mean, something clicked. And, I mean, they've been playing some good football.
Yeah, that's a scary team. It is going forward. All right, I'm going to step away from fantasy football a little bit, go a little bit homer. Rick, but it's hard to believe there are still people out there questioning that Steelers trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I'm sorry, if you do, you are a draftnik fool. And I just don't. Look, everybody can look at the numbers. We all know what Minkah Fitzpatrick has done and the complete 180 it has done on that Steelers defense. I don't want to hear about the first-round pick. Worst case scenario, this is going to be the 16th or 17th overall pick? Yes, we're going to have to do something. The Steelers are going to have to do something about Ben Roethlisberger, and soon, if we don't think Mason Rudolph's that guy. I don't think Mason Rudolph's that guy. But you know what? I don't care. It's 16. You're talking about a lottery ticket, a coin flip if you're looking for a quarterback there. I don't want to hear it. He has transformed this defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers, as we sit here right now, are in the playoffs. If the season ended today.
You're right.
Obviously it doesn't, but if the season ended today,
True.
They're in the playoffs. And I can point to nothing else. A better play by Mason Rudolph, but this was the catalyst for it and worth that first-round pick. What's going to end up probably being a 17-21 somewhere in that first round. If you don't think that's worth it, you're –
an idiot.
You're an idiot. Yeah.
I
Shut
tell
up.
you
How
what,
about
let's
that?
look at some of the whining and remember when Daniel Jones was picked?
Oh,
that's crazy. Well, guess what? Wasn't so awful bad. Some of those guys actually know more than some of these guys on Twitter. It's amazing.
That's not possible, Rick. I don't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I mean, some of these pro scouts and these GMs and coaches, they actually know something about football.
No, Rick, that Jimmy Dubs on Twitter has they all 32, and he watches it in between his shifts at Burger King, and he knows, right. Rick. Don't tell me about scouts.
But I'll tell you what, seriously, number one pick means nothing. They already have a number one pick.
Right.
That is a proven commodity. And there's no guesswork.
Right.
They have him. We got him, and he's playing now. I mean, forget next year.
Yeah.
Because this defense, with the addition of him, it's amazing. It is night and day. Joe Hayden doesn't have to run around like Troy did towards the end of his career trying to cover the entire secondary. Everybody's where they need to be. That pickup of Steven Nelson, is another great, solid pickup. Well, why'd they get him? We heard that. Why'd they get him? Number one, he wasn't expensive, and number two, he's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And now Minkah Fitzpatrick just seems to be everywhere he needs to be. And yeah, there's not even an argument. I mean, it's because it's just somebody that said something months ago that can't admit that they were wrong.
Yeah,
period.
And that's what it is. And I'd like, in full disclosure, I like the deal.
I loved
from
it
the very beginning, but now seeing the fruits of it, it just makes it obvious. And truthfully, I don't think you have to be looking for Ben Roethlisberger's replacement right now.
No, we have 2 more years of Ben, and if not, Mason Rudolph. Look, is he going to be a franchise quarterback? Probably not. But is he going to? I mean. If this defense is as good as it looks right now,
I'd sign Andy Dalton in the offseason, and I'll make a deep run in the playoffs with
Mason
that Steelers
Rudolph
team.
is Trent Dilfer easily.
Right.
As simple as that. I mean, he is, if not better.
Yeah, I don't know if this Steelers defense is that transformative as to what that Ravens defense, but maybe they are. The last couple weeks they've been playing that
Maybe
way.
not, but I think, Trent Dilfer is kind of a low bar. I'm not trying to be. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, so you can't take anything away from the man. But, yeah, you're right. Sign Andy Dalton. He's without a job.
Yeah.
Who cares?
And let the thing come completely undone, and get the top 3 pick where you get in Andrew Luck territory or something, that kind of, there's never any surefire, we know that, but the ones where there's no question, I'm sorry, if you're drafting a quarterback after the top 5, there's questions there. Now, in recent years, we've seen Mahomes, we've seen Watson, we've seen some guys trickle down. We've also seen Dwayne Haskins, right? And so this is what you have a team that can win now. If Ben Roethlisberger can come back healthy, this team is going to be among the 5 favorites for the Super Bowl next season. If Ben Roethlisberger is not healthy, you find somebody, you find a bridge guy, ride out this defense you have put together right now, try to do it 90s style, right, with defense and a Neil O'Donnell. But to keep arguing still at this point, you look like a fool. Don't be a fool.
And how much of a fool would they look like if, just for example, even if they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they make a deep run into the playoffs? I was talking about the Steelers under Mason Rudolph, and he's playing, 230 to 270 a game, a touchdown or 2, very few turnovers, good turnover ratio. What more do you need?
Yeah, if that defense is going to keep playing that one. All right, I'll quit homering up. You got any other takeaways, Rick?
Yeah, you know what? The AFC, while it's mediocre, it's extremely exciting. Besides the division leaders, we have Buffalo at 6-3, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and Oakland at 5-4, Tennessee at 5-5, Jacksonville at 4-5, and the Chargers at 4-6. I mean, it is wide open. Yeah, and, it's exciting watching these races.
That last Sunday is going to be a fun one because there's probably going to be 5 teams in line for 2 spots. Now, a lot of these teams play each other going forward. And the funny thing is, you look at it, most of them have a soft schedule the rest of the way. It seems like everybody's got Cincinnati and Miami still to go. So yeah, I think that's going to be a while. It's not the best teams, and you're basically just, playing for the right to have New England or Kansas City bash your head in. That being said, Kansas City ain't going far, Rick. With that defense,
Baltimore might be.
Baltimore, yeah, I guess I should mention it. And that was kind of my next. We'll just segue right into that. My last takeaway. Here's all I wrote down, Rick. Lamar Jackson. Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow. I have taken a cautious approach to Lamar Jackson. I know you either have to be all in or a hater. I'm doing the air quotes thing here. I've kind of taken the cautious approach. Here's what I don't know if 4 years from now we're having this conversation about Lamar Jackson, but for right now and for what presumes to be the rest of this season, look the hell out. This kid, everything he touches turns to gold. That defense has got no answers for him. If you take away the run, he's able to make the throws. If you take away the throws, he'll just rip off 25 yards for him. You know what he reminds me of, Rick? Colin Kaepernick, the 49ers Super Bowl year, where he got that heater, and it was never the same after that. And you're probably not supposed to say that now, but it was never the same after that. But, boy, for that 1 year, and we saw stretches from Michael Vick like that in the past.
Yeah.
These guys who are really excellent runners. We don't talk about Watson and Rodgers, the guys who can run, guys who run, Michael Vick, Colin Kaepernick, and now Lamar Jackson. They hit stretches where there's nothing you can do with them. I don't know if it's sustainable year over year, season over season, but for right now, if I'm betting right now, Rick, I think the Baltimore Ravens may be the favorites to win the Super Bowl because there is nothing anybody can do to slow Lamar Jackson down right now.
Not right now. You're right. And everything you said is right. He's amazing. They have no answers for him. It just scares me to death to see a quarterback through, 10 games of the year has over 700 yards rushing. I mean, that scares me to death. It takes just one trip up and a hit on a knee to end his career. I mean, we saw that happen with RG3. And, that was another one that, comes to mind that you worry about. That
magical year he had in 2012, and it was never the same again.
Yeah, because of Mike Shanahan. Ran him to death. And, no, I mean, you're right. Absolutely. I think he's amazing. His stats are there. He has, 21 total touchdowns. He only has 5 picks. He's got over 2,000 yards passing, 700 yards rushing. Everything's just fast, just fabulous. It just worries me every single time. Look, I don't even root for the Ravens, but you love to see a guy playing like he does, But, boy, you hold your breath every time he takes that run out of the pocket, don't you?
Yeah.
Because everybody is coming at him full steam. I mean, because they're all running 4.5s out there.
Yeah.
And it's scary. I mean, but, yeah. I mean, if you're a fantasy owner, enjoy it.
Well, I got to say, this is so hard as an admitted Steelers homer. You're so predisposed, and for good reason, to hate the Baltimore Ravens. It is thrilling to watch this kid play right now. It is so fun to watch. And
I found out, since I have a couple of years on you,
like
in
40
experience,
of them.
I find it much, much harder to hate even division rivals, even close, not even compared to how much I hated the Raiders back in the 70s. Because you had the Steel Curtain and you had the Raiders, you had the Houston Oilers. They were the same stinking team year after, and you hate Snake Stabler, couldn't stand him. I wanted to see him get crushed.
See, and that's the real dilemma I have, though, for someone my age. It's the Baltimore Ravens.
Right. I mean, I understand that, but it's just the faces change so much.
That's
it's
true.
not quite the same.
You don't have 10 years of the same nonsense. Yeah, I get that. I'm a little young for the Raiders, I guess. I'm trying to think when I was a kid, was it Bernie Kosar with the Browns? But it's the Steelers were generally competitive with them. The Browns were better during those days, but it was generally competitive games. And then the Browns left, and then they come back, and they were so awful. I don't really have that. You know actually who it is for probably everybody, but someone in my age, if we don't have that Raiders, it's the Patriots, right? While not division play, they play every year, and they can't compete with them. And
that's the problem
evil
too.
Empire, you know what I mean?
That's the problem too. I mean, a rivalry is
it should be, right?
And Nick Saban said that. I just saw it on some rivalry show on Sports Channel or something. I don't know what it was, but he actually said, a rivalry is where you don't know who's going to win the game.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Alabama-LSU rivalry or whatever. It's not Alabama-Vanderbilt.
And I'll tell you what, talk about kicking off a football as good as the NFL was. It started 3:30 on Saturday with that Alabama-LSU game. Wow, that was fun to watch.
And Minnesota-Penn State game.
Yeah.
Was horrible to watch being Penn State fan, but I tell you what, Minnesota played good.
Fan. That's where you went wrong.
Minnesota played a great game.
All right, Rick. Well, let's move on here.
Please.
Game ball goes to.
Game ball, stinky socks. Go ahead and start this show.
Okay.
Game ball goes to.
Amari Cooper.
I mean, you say that as somebody who had been vanquished by Amari Cooper this week.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I get vanquished I have arguably one of the best lineups I've ever fielded in fantasy football in our League of Consequence.
Good for you after what you did.
And I've lost 3 straight to career games by everybody that seems to play. But anyway, 11 catches, 147 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that was against a good Minnesota defense too.
Yeah, that's Michael Gallup hasn't turned into what I thought he should be.
Started off kind of fast,
had
that injury, and he just hasn't been quite the same.
Ezekiel Elliott, has been kind of up and down, just hasn't been dominating the way you expect an Ezekiel Elliott to do so. So I think it speaks well of Dak Prescott that he's able to keep that team competitive, and it's almost exclusively through the use of Amari Cooper, right? I worry about Amari Cooper. He reminds me of so many guys in the past where every time he gets hit, he's slow getting up. It seems like he's perpetually nicked up. He looks like he's been shot.
Joseph Adai.
Yeah, every time he gets tackled, he looks like he's been shot. But he keeps getting back up. And you watch these games, and a lot of the time the numbers don't bear it out, but you sit down to watch a game when it's in prime time, and I promise you this will happen on Thanksgiving. It'll feel like every single play goes to Amari Cooper.
Yep.
And he catches a 5-yard in, and he's somehow 45 yards downfield. It's just he's one of those guys, and it's scary. And it's still hard to believe Oakland didn't have room for that guy on that team as they're sitting, a half game out of the playoffs right now.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, I'll keep the good vibes going. We game ball to DJ Moore, Rick. How about 9 for $120 and a touchdown? With what Kyle Allen's doing there, Curtis Samuel's been good. He's been finding the end zone. It seems like DJ Moore's been the possession guy, plus along with what, obviously, Christian McCaffrey's doing. But DJ Moore is getting very consistent, right? It's not overwhelming, but as a guy you probably have as a low end 2, a high 3, a flex spot, and a 2 receiver league, you're getting a lot of production from DJ Moore. You don't know if you trust it every week, but I think each week more and more you see a trust developing between Kyle Allen and DJ Moore, and it's exciting to watch. We had that debate all summer. DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, can they support both? No, I think we might have been wrong on that, Rick. Not to tremendous numbers, but both are putting up viable fantasy football numbers right now.
Let's not forget that Cam Newton's not quarterback.
True.
I mean, it's a different.
That was a big part of our argument.
It's a different scenario.
You're right.
I mean, I could see Greg Olsen having at least 15 more catches if Newton was in there, if not more. And a quarterback would be running more. Obviously.
Yeah, the offense has completely changed with Kyle Allen, and surprisingly, Kyle Allen he's been great. I'll just say he's been really good. He's been great for the situation.
DJ Moore, 54 catches, 684 yards. Yeah, really, the only thing holding him back as far as being a wide receiver 1 is the lack of touchdowns. He only has the 1.
Right.
I mean, he is 15th in PPR scoring, so that's not bad.
Yeah, you'll take that.
All right. Well,
you stink.
I've got a pair of socks.
Oh, okay. Well, most people do.
And I want to give one to a running back and another one to a running back.
Oh, but you're putting them together.
Yes.
This is bold.
I'm going to give one to Lev Bell. 18 carries, 34 yards. He did have a touchdown, but his longest run was 4 yards against the frickin' who? New York Giants. Okay? Yeah. And the other sock goes to Saquon Barkley. 13 rushes, 1 yard.
1 yard.
No touchdowns. His longest run was 3 yards against the frickin' New York Jets. So they get a pair of socks. They're terrible. It was horrible.
And how about Saquon Barkley after the game goes for an MRI on nothing? They won't tell us what it was for.
No, it was his shoulder.
It's no concern.
An X-ray on his shoulder.
Or an X-ray, yeah, not an MRI.
And he says he will not cut back his playing time. And he's fine. I don't know. Maybe he got some of that stuff Pete Carroll had. I'd have no idea.
It's been bad, pretty much. We've had the injuries, but it's been uninspiring even when healthy with Saquon Barkley this year. Is this a Daniel Jones thing? Is this the offense being I just can't fathom how this offense is now running through Golden Tate, and it really is. And
Daniel Jones.
Right, and not Saquon Barkley.
I don't know.
He hasn't been as effective in the passing games. We can put that on Daniel Jones. Why? Maybe it's the offensive line. I don't know. I'm nervous, as a Saquon Barkley owner in several leagues. And for Saquon Barkley owners, like sitting across the table from me, it's no bueno.
Well, Saquon Barkley, of course, he missed, the 3 games with the ankle injury. We understand that. But he's behind James Conner, who missed time. Elvin Kamara, no shame there, but he's missed time. He's behind Lev Bell, who we've been lamenting all year long about how poorly he's been playing. So, I mean, he's got 402 yards, 2 touchdowns, 33 catches, 200. All in all, he's got almost 700 total yards.
It's a nice year, just not what you expected from Saquon.
Exactly. That's not what you drafted him for.
Right. And you wonder, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a high ankle for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You just wonder, because he hasn't been good since he's been back. You just wonder, those things tend to stick around, right? And he kind of came back quicker than we initially thought he would as it was. You wonder if he just didn't right. I mean, 13 carries for 1 yard against the New York Jets. Your offensive line can't be that bad. It just can't.
You wouldn't think so.
It can't possibly be that bad. All right. Since you did it, Rick, unprecedented, I'm going to do it.
Oh!
I'm going to take a pair of stinky socks.
All right, I like that.
One probably has a lot to do with the other as I go with QB and wide receiver. Jared Goff looked like he was completely lost out there against that Pittsburgh Steelers pass rush.
He was.
2 interceptions, a fumble loss, and less than 2 fantasy points. To that end, he did throw for over 230 yards. Unfortunately, nary a one of them went to Cooper Kupp, who you would think should average 15 catches a game with Brandon Cooks out.
Right.
And he takes the hook, the donut, zip zero, stingy with De Niro. Cooper Kupp with nothing. good. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. That's great, but just big, gnarly, stinky socks for those two. That Rams offense is a mess with a capital M.
Yeah, and we hit it, with Brian Williams out. I mean, it's not going to get any better.
Ball goes to.
My start of the week last week at quarterback was Daniel Jones. I just got to toot his horn, 26 for 40, 4 touchdowns in a losing effort. We already talked about the run game, no run game, 3 yards rushing, and he kept this team in that game,
right,
where they could have gotten blown out quite easily.
Danny Dimes.
Yeah, man.
He's going to be the real God. I hope he turns into Peyton Manning. It is all these New York fans saying, I told you all along, after the way they react.
Yeah.
And all the draftniks and the fussing and carrying on.
Exactly.
All right, what do we got here?
Ball goes to.
I got to give one shout here to Ronald Jones, Rick. I don't think we've really talked about how he's kind of taken over that number one role in Tampa. Now, that number one role in Tampa equates to about 30 yards a week in rushing, right, which he had last week, I believe, was 29 yards.
And yet, Peyton Barber had 43 and a touchdown, too, in the same game. But
he's become a big, big part of that passing game. Last week, 8 catches, 77 yards. Up until Peyton Barber sniped that one for him last week, he'd been consistently finding the end zone. Here's a guy you got late, and he hit waiver wires early, and you picked him up off of waivers. Here's a guy who, Rick, I'm feeling pretty good about heading through the rest of the season. They find new and creative ways to lose games every week, but everybody's putting up numbers. Jameis Winston throws for 400 yards every week. It's funny. I'm not a mathematician. We need to figure out the formula that the higher Jameis Winston passing yards go, at the same rate their winning percentage goes down. Their chance of winning percentage goes down. It's amazing. Mike Evans is putting up monster numbers. Chris Godwin's doing what we all expected him to do this summer. And now Ronald Jones in PPR formats is putting up numbers week in and week out.
Jameis Winston is third in the league in passing yards. 17 touchdowns, 14 picks.
Well, that therein lies the rub.
Yeah, and I remember we had a show with that as a whole subject. But, yeah, he's a mess. I mean, look, I understand that the offense isn't – I can't say it's not good because they tend to score points on people, and they have a good run game. Yep. I'm not sure what the problem is. Is it Jameis Winston? He certainly hasn't stepped up to.
He turns the ball over.
Exact 14 picks already.
And every time he turns it over, it's in some spectacular fashion. Somehow the ball ends 60 yards up in the air, or 50 yards behind him, and every time it's returned for a touchdown. I've never seen such highs. A guy with the ability to throw for 450 yards in a National Football League game, and you walk away with it thinking he looked like a boob today. It's just amazing.
Here's just a little example of if you're playing fantasy football and you have minus points for interceptions, obviously, right? Jameis Winston has 2,765 passing yards. Okay, jot this down a little bit if you want.
I'm going to do the math here. All right. 20.
Tom Brady has 2,536.
Okay. So that means Jameis Winston has more.
Jameis Winston has 17 touchdowns.
Okay.
Tom Brady has 14.
So that's more as well.
Jameis Winston has 139 rushing yards.
No, we don't need to talk about
Tom Brady has 3.
Okay.
Jameis Winston has 3 more fantasy points than Tom Brady.
Tells you all you need to know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the 30. Yeah, you keep talking about the 14 interceptions. What are the fumbles lost, too? I mean, it's got to be approaching double digits.
Yeah,
and it's always spectacular when
4.
he does it. 4, yeah.
So he has 18 turnovers. That's a lot.
Yeah, and like I said, the higher his yardage and touchdowns go up, the lower their winning percentage goes. It's truly amazing.
That's true.
All right, we picked Thursday Night Football. Or
yes,
you got more?
Let's do it.
All right, so before we get into that, one last stinky sock to either the National Football League or the NCAA. I don't know who to blame, as tonight the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road in Cleveland while the Pitt Panthers are in Heinz Field hosting North Carolina. that's
Yeah.
pretty dumb. But
Nice
let's
scheduling.
talk about the Steelers here. Steelers coming off that win, getting 3, going to Cleveland, coming off a win as well.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. And, I mean, obviously these odds makers know more than we do. I mean,
It's a
they're
pick 'em
basically
game. They gave them the 3 for
They're giving
home
them the
field.
3 points. I tell you what, I like this Pittsburgh defense and the way they're playing right now. I know it's going to be a short week, but I think that actually will benefit the Steeler defense. Just not near as many wrinkles can be thrown into the offense in such a short time. I like Pittsburgh 24, Cleveland 20, so I'm going to have Pittsburgh win and cover.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a horrific football game to watch. Right?
Most likely.
Yeah, the
They
Steelers
mostly are.
Yeah, the Steelers' offense is blah, and that might be an understatement. They're blah. The Browns' offense has been bad. Both really good defensive football teams. I just think the Steelers are on such a tear. You know, you worry. I hate the short week going on the road. It's a 90-minute drive from Heinz Field to whatever that sewer is in Cleveland. So I'm going to take the Steelers here. Nothing would surprise me. A blowout either way, a tight game, a tie. Nothing would surprise me. I hate these Thursday night games. I think it is a field goal game. I'm going to make it Steelers 20-16 just to have a pick against the spread. So I think we agree 100%. I think the one thing, if he can stay on the field, James Conner has a big, big night tonight.
You can run on
You
Cleveland
can run on
traditionally, yeah.
Cleveland. All right, is that it?
No, I got a couple of strange and unusual sports factoids for the audience
Rick
and
Briggs
yourself.
Factoids.
Yeah. Okay. Former New York Yankee first baseman Joe Pepitone was born on October 9th, 1940.
Well, you cannot have a more New York name than Joe Pepitone.
I remember Joe.
I do not.
He's the same birth date as the late Beatle John Lennon. The guy that wrote this says, I don't really know exactly what this means, but perhaps it explains some of the counterculture activities by Pepitone, the first ball player ever to use a hairdryer in the clubhouse.
That's a bold move.
Yeah.
When did Mr. Pepitone play?
In the 60s.
Oh, yeah, that's a real bold move.
Oh, you do not remember Joe Pepitone.
No, that's way before my
Long
time.
black hair, he was cool. All right, it takes 3,000 cows to supply the NFL with enough leather for a year's supply of footballs.
Well, it's because they keep throwing them in the stands after every play.
Did you know
I didn't.
that there are only 2 days of the year in which there are no professional sports games from baseball, basketball, hockey, or football?
No, that's actually fascinating.
That is the day before and the day after the baseball all-star game.
It would be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That's the only one.
I never thought about that.
I didn't either. Deion Sanders has played in both the World Series and the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I did know that.
Okay. The Olympic rings. Do you know why the Olympic rings are yellow, green, red, black, and blue?
I do not.
Those colors were selected because at least one of those 5 colors appeared in every flag of the world.
I'll be darned.
The Boston Celtics. We all know the Boston Celtics, right?
I'm aware.
A charter NBA franchise.
I've heard of them.
Have never had a player lead the league in scoring.
Larry Bird never led the league in scoring?
Never led the league in scoring. My jaw dropped when I read that one.
And all they did was win every championship for about 30 years in the 60s.
It is a team game, isn't it?
Apparently.
Oh, wow.
I'll be darned.
Isn't that something? Okay, let's see. Who's the only player to play in 3 straight World Series for 3 different teams?
Oh, jeez. I would have no idea.
Don Baylor. 86 Red Sox, 87 Twins, 88 A's. I'd have never guessed that.
No, I couldn't have got there.
Okay. In 1960, Yankee second baseman Bobby Richardson hit 1 home run and knocked in 26 runs in 150 games and 460 at-bats. Okay? That year against the Pittsburgh Pirates, he set a World Series record with 12 RBIs, including a grand slam. He became the only player from a losing team ever to be voted World Series MVP.
After 1 in 26 through the entire season.
And do you know how many dimples are on a regulation golf ball?
7.
336.
So they count them? I'll be darned.
No, some guy just over in the corner made up a number.
Well, that's
of
what I'm
course they
thinking.
count them.
I think it could be variable. Do the dimples have to be a regulation size?
Do you think
Is there a dimple standard for your golf balls per the USGA? You're the
on
golf
a
guy.
regulation golf ball? Yes.
Who's taking the time to count them, though? Like, could Tiger
sure.
Woods protest Phil Mickelson's ball for lack or overuse of dimples?
I doubt it. If they're both playing Titleist, it's kind of hard
Would
to argue
more
them.
dimples? Or
Do you think a Cushnet or Titleist is actually going to change their little machine die
Well,
with
that's-
one or two less dimples so
that's
they
true.
can make one? No,
would more dimples or less be better?
I don't know.
Or is that the perfect amount of
It's
dimples?
probably the aerodynamic configuration of the dimples.
Here's
that
what I want you to work on
provide
for next week.
Maximum trajectory.
Why
with
do
less,
they have dimples?
Huh?
Why do they have dimples? Why is it not a solid ball? This I need to know. That's your homework for next week.
No, that's your homework.
Well, I'm going to forget as soon as we get off the air. You know that.
It's for aerodynamic purposes.
All right. I think we've lost the show here. Let's go watch the Steelers and Pitt. I'm going to be double screening tonight. So
All right.
thanks for joining us. If you're still listening, I don't know why, but we appreciate it. Check out the show at Asylum Football on Twitter. You can still get questions for Rick's mailbag tomorrow night, asylumfootball@gmail.com. And, of course, everything over at Fulltime Fantasy, at Fulltime Fantasy on Twitter and fulltimefantasy.com. Till tomorrow, I guess. We'll see you.
This allows the smoothly flowing air to follow the ball's surface a little farther around the backside of the ball, thereby decreasing the size of the wake.
Say take care.
Take care.